2, 1. RockyHead Homestead, how y'all guys doing?
Good, how are you?
Just fine.
Hi. So, this is y'all's first time on the podcast, so just let everybody know who you are and what y'all are about.
Okay, so we are RockyHead Homestead, Leonard and Tammy Ziglar. We have 1.7 acres on Leonard's great-grandparents' homestead site. They established this homestead site in
1860, 1862, something like that.
Go turn off your dehydrator.
I understand. Oh, that's perfectly fine. Look, it don't matter whatsoever. Y'all gotta have a dehumidifier. It's Alabama. Yeah, I understand that completely.
Oh, it's dehydrator.
Oh, dehydrate. Oh, hey, that's even better. Y'all got to get food. Homestead's got to have food.
So we're dehydrating pecans to make pecan meal to use for breading for fish and pork chops and chicken and stuff.
Wow. So people use that kind of like a cornmeal substitute.
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
That's fantastic. So how long has that been around for a while, or is just people just like pecans are too expensive? Let's use corn.
Really, I don't know. We found some last year from a place that they were doing some pecan meal, and I was like, I think I can make that myself. So we're giving it a shot. We'll see how that turns out.
Oh yeah, I mean they're everywhere, and with the tornadoes tearing down the plantations in Texas and North Carolina, and the U.S. doing this mass ship-in of foreign pecans, they're like 40 cents a pound. I remember we could pick up a 50-pound dog food sack and get like $200 for it, and that must be like a real shock to the market, that drastic of a price change.
It's a real shock to the locals because they're used to being able to supplement their Christmas budgets. And a lot of places aren't even accepting the common seedlings and Stewarts. They won't even accept them. They'll only accept Elliott's, and even those is a really low price this year. So a lot of people are they're just letting them rot in their yard. They're not even bothering to pick them up.
Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of people, and I saw this with the corn and the peanut harvest too, where they're really selling them on Facebook now, where they're a lot of people are I saw this one dude, he's like, I've got 2,000 pounds of corn for $150. I'm like, is that a ton means something different agriculture wise? Or is this and I looked it up, and that's the wholesale, contractor farmer price, what he would pay to the dude he's growing it for.
Was it field corn or sweet corn?
I think it was field corn. It was grain corn.
Yeah, you can still eat that. It's fine for human consumption. But he was a lot of people buying it probably bought it for either deer plots or cattle or hogs, something like that.
Yeah, but $150 to $170 for 2,000 pounds, that is a lot.
Yes.
At the feed store in Ayrton, it's $8 for a 50-pound sack.
Right.
Y'all are robbing us, and we didn't even know it. I looked at, you can mass order 1,000 50-pound bags from China for 18 cents a piece. We're being robbed.
It's packaging and middlemen.
Right. Ain't not that much.
Grow your own.
Nobody's got time for that. A lot of people really with this coronavirus has definitely learned, hey, maybe, myself, I went to Lowe's. I'm like, let's get some green beans. Let's get some, something. Maybe, it's in no way, shape, or form going to support us. But, I was kind of freaking out. So I was like, maybe we'll have, something. Something.
That's been a big increase this year in home gardens and that sort of stuff because, a lot more people have been at home, teleworking, doing other things. So they're like, I got all this extra time on my hands,
Right.
So coming up with something.
Yeah. And a lot of people have done DIY work on their house because the traditional route was you have a house, it's nice for weekend stuff, but then you also want to go places on the weekend, but then you just sleep there and keep your stuff there and then go to work. But it looks like culturally we're evolving to this stay at home, work at home mentality, which I knew from the jump. All these Facebooks and Googles and Amazons, they're just going to be like, guys, we don't have to spend $1 billion on this campus. Like, everybody can just work at home with a decent internet connection. And then people are going to look around. It's like, my house is a piece of crap. I need to, like, something needs to get fixed.
Yeah, that has been a big deal on the market. From what I understand, I have guys that I know that are contracting, having trouble getting windows, where they're building houses, having trouble getting treated boards, that sort of stuff, because people have been doing so much home improvement DIY type stuff. They've used up, and then the plants have been shut, so they haven't been able to, process the lumber, get additional, so your supply chain's slowed down too.
So they've used up the reserves and the stockpiles that they had back, and they haven't had the workforce to build them back up to keep up with demand.
Yeah, you had the same kind of thing happen in the agricultural market from, cattle, beef processing, meat processing, that sort of thing. There's no shortage in meat. The shortage has been in the fact that the processors have been shut, been having to work at 50% capacity, that sort of. So they haven't been able to process as much meat, kill, as much cattle, as much hogs, whatever. So therefore, prices have gone up.
So it's bottlenecked. You have all these people selling beef, and then they get to the processor, and the processor just doesn't have the people or the equipment to handle that kind of, so it gets backlogged. It's the same thing right now with getting pecans cracked and shelled. So people are trying to sell their pecans, instead of selling them whole to a wholesaler, they're trying to sell them on Facebook, like you said. But in order to do that, people, when they want to buy them, they want to buy them cracked and shelled. They don't want to have to do that at home, or they don't have a handheld, cracker at home to do it. So all these people are taking all their pecans to get them cracked and shelled. Well, you have places that they'll open up at 8:30 and they close at 9:30, and that's all they take for the day. Or there's the one place in Enterprise, she's shut her doors. She's not accepting any more pecans to crack and shell for 3 weeks. That's how backlogged they are. The place in Midland City, it's 7 to 10 days before you get them back. So there's a bottleneck there too.
I really think
we don't sell ours that way. So
yeah, like I really think, because I can remember my grandpa. He would we would pick up like pecans for him, sell half, and he'd keep half, and he'd just be out there with a manual cracker, just cracking and shelling. But of course, he didn't have anything to do. But I mean, realistically, you can't do that. Like, I wouldn't wish that on nobody. If that's just something you want to do because that's your thing, more power to you. But you can't do that. Like, as like a
hand. If you had a cracker, that's
when you're processing 4 or 5 pound. That's one thing. When you're processing 400 pound, that's something completely different.
Oh, right. Like you have to have some type of automation.
Right.
Yeah.
So about y'all's homestead. So is that just something that y'all like that? So tell me more about the history about y'all's homestead.
So from a history perspective, best I can tell, just tracing the family tree and stuff, the family got this land that's here as part of the 1862 Homestead Act.
Okay.
So moved from Virginia down here in about 1859, 1860, and then received the deeds to the property in 1862 as part of the Homestead Act. My great-grandmother lived here till she was 104, 105 years old. She was, it was about 1994, 95 when she passed away, somewhere in that area.
Wow.
But it's been one of those things where they've sold off portions, and then as, like when she passed, then her 3 kids, then they split it, so that's why we have 1.7 acres. But we have the original homestead site.
Right. The original homestead site where the original homestead house was sitting is where we're at.
So y'all's house being there is the reason that road turned so tightly. Your great grandma was like, "I'm not giving it up," and they're just like, "We're just gonna turn the tight really hard."
Probably.
I think they changed I think it originally was a T intersection, and then they changed it. But yeah, the the original house, the right of way, when they put that curve in, that's like the worst NASCAR curve in history.
Right.
The actual right of way went across the front porch of the house. So, yeah.
Like
I told you, I mean, our house is much smaller than that house, but.
Okay.
So
like when I told y'all.
So 2013, 2012, 2013, we sold the house off the property. And then so it was just a few barns that were here and no house. And then we've come back in and built a cabin here, a little small 700 square foot cabin on the property.
Okay.
Then we've got the 10,000 square foot garden plot that we've got going. That sounds like a lot. It is 9 30 by 30 plots. A little more manage them individually rather than one huge 10,000 square foot garden plot.
Well, and then we can do better like crop rotation and amending the soil as it needs to be amended depending upon what crops are on it. And so more about soil conservation and growing better food we don't put any pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, anything like that. We use either manually or neem oil, organic type.
Right. So we're not certified organic, but we're growing naturally, right? So we're not trying to grow. We're not. I guess spending the money to get the government certification that says you're certified. But we are, trying to grow 100% naturally grown.
The hard thing about that organic certification is that word organic is overused and misused so much. So what we invite people to do is come out and look, ask us, come out and see how we grow stuff. Ask us how we take care of stuff. What do we put on it? What do we not put on it? And we don't even as far as weeds and stuff like that, our yard is as natural as it can possibly be. We don't put we mow the grass. That's it. If the grass gets watered, it's because God watered it. It's not because we've put anything on it. I mean, you can tell by looking at it that we do not live in a golf course.
Right. And we, from a grower perspective, irrigation and that sort of stuff, we use subsurface drip irrigation. So it's all planted about 6 inches or laid down about 6 inches under the ground.
So the water goes directly to the roots where it needs to be.
Right.
That also helps with disease and pests too. They're not getting that water, so it doesn't cause any disease with the leaves and that of the plants, and it also doesn't help the pests along.
Right.
Okay.
And it cuts down on weeds too, because now you're not watering your middles where you would be normally walking, so you're not putting water there, so you don't have as much weed growth in the middles as you do. And then we have wheel hoe where we do frequent shallow cultivation 2 or 3 times a week, so we try to keep as much weeds down as possible.
And when you say wheel hoe, it's a manual wheel hoe, like push wheel hoe. So you go in between the rows of vegetables, and basically we're just aggravating the weeds to death, and eventually they quit coming back.
Okay. That's really cool. So I came out there. When I came out there, I saw y'all do no-till farming, correct?
Yes and no.
Not 100% no-till, right? So no-till, literally on a true small-scale farming situation, it's really hard to do true no-till, right? We deal probably more of what I would consider minimal till. Right.
Okay.
We'll till a plot, get the plot prepped and everything ready to go, and then we'll move into just the frequent shallow cultivation pretty consistently. A lot of your small farmers that you see on the internet, on YouTube, that sort of stuff,
especially market gardeners.
The market gardeners that are doing no-till, they're not truly doing a no-till situation. They're piling compost up on top of the ground and then planting in the compost. The ground's just so hard. There's nothing available for the small scale farmer, like seed drills and that sort of stuff, to do a true no-till environment.
Like a commercial
farmer would use. Something behind a big tractor that's, weighs 500-600 pounds, that's going to drill the individual seeds into the soil.
And the reason that we do use a tiller, it's a push tiller or a manual, we don't use a tractor.
Tiller, yeah.
But part of that is because until we started gardening out here, this land, your great grandmother gardened.
Right.
That was decades ago.
Right. It probably had not been actually turned into gardened until probably from the late 70s, early 80s time frame.
To 2018.
To 2018, when we started turning the ground.
Wow.
So we needed to be able to break up that sod. And here we have our top layer is sand, but below that is very hard clay soil. So we had to be able to break that up. We had to do it to get it even started.
Now from a suppression standpoint, that sort of stuff, we do tarp our plots if we're not using them, or we put cover crops on those plots. Out here right now, I have 3 plots that have tarps on them of the 9 plots. The 9th plot we're going to build a barn on, so it doesn't really have anything on it right now. So we have 8 usable plots that are basically 1,000 square foot apiece. And then we have cover crop on 2 spots right now. We've got 2 spots that we have stuff planted in, and 1 spot that is prepping to be planted. That'll probably be onions, garlic, leeks, that sort of stuff.
Okay. So the reason I say that is because a lot of people, I think it was back in the early 2000s, 2005, when a lot of scientists started coming out with climate change research. They were saying it's hey, so we discovered this new thing where we're stripping away the topsoil, and all the topsoil is getting flung up into these clouds. And they actually had radar of the planet in May and April, or not May, but March and April, when the normal tillage season is for the crops and everything, where you would see these giant clouds of dust that they determined was the topsoil being thrown up in the air. And they're we're getting off of samples, because once you get rid of the topsoil, everything else is just kind of a barren. It's not as good. It may not be completely barren, but it's not as good. So a lot of them have said we've only got 25 to 30 years of usable topsoil on our commercial farming plots. And that's a lot. And that's a lot why no-till and stuff like that has really become popularized. Have y'all heard of that or shared those concerns in any way, or is this just new information?
So a lot of there's a gentleman that leases the 2 fields that are on the family land here, and he rotates between cotton, peanuts, and corn and soybeans. So because each one of those crops takes different nutrients, when he does one and then rotates with the next one, then that helps with that soil conservation. Now, when you talk about big commercial farming, especially Florida, California, the big, huge commercial farms, I don't know what they're doing. And who knows what they're really doing. But a lot of the they're using the drills to help do that. So they're not disking up these huge plots or these huge fields. They're using those drills to put the seed in, and that helps a lot with that as well.
Right.
And then they cover crop too.
Right. And that goes back to what I was saying about your heavier machinery in your commercial environment. A lot of those farmers have went to a no-till, true commercial environment where they're not turning the soil, bottom plowing the soil and flipping the soil completely over. A lot of them have went to the heavier seed drills and that sort of stuff, where they're putting the stuff in a lot tighter. The there is research out there where I've seen some of that research. There's a lot of research out there now where there's several farms in the Midwest where they're getting together and talking about cover cropping and doing certain things to put, you've just pulled something out that, collards or cabbages and things like that use are heavy feeders, use a lot of nitrogen. So they're coming back behind that and planting a soybean or field peas or something like that they can then leave there and then come back with just light tillage and disc into the soil so that cuts back in and puts nitrogen back into the ground. Like we've done that here where we've pulled our corn out, which is a real heavy feeder. We've put Australian field peas back in that plot, let it grow, and then come in, mowed the field peas, and turned all that in before they went to seed while it's got all that nitrogen scavenged into the plant itself so that it puts the nitrogen back into the ground. We've got one plot where we had some issues with some nematodes this year. We're going to do a thing called biofumigation where we've planted mustard and radish, daikon radishes. That plot's really, really hard, like Tammy was saying earlier, the hard pan there for that topsoil or where the clay soil is. So the tillage radishes will go down, bust that hard pan up, and make it easier, aerate that soil, make the soil better there. And then when we'll come in and mow the mustard, and then we'll come behind that and turn that in and then tarp that whole plot. And the breaking down and the decay of that mustard plant and the radish plants, so the spiciness in those plants, I forget what that chemical that they release is called during that, but that will then kill off those nematodes that cause the root knot problems. Won't hurt necessarily.
It's a microorganism, and it causes little hard nodules on the roots of the plants, especially okra.
And it'll kill your plants off.
Oh wow!
So you'll turn those in, and it'll kill off that'll kill off all those. You have to wait about 14, 15 days, 20 days, something like that after you've tilled it in, cut it, tilled it in, tarped it. You have to do all that process in about 30 minutes, and then you have to wait about 15 days. It'll kill all that off. That material will be broke down enough in the soil that then you can go back in and plant. Otherwise, it'll act like pre-emergent, and it'll destroy your seed while it's in the ground. So
and if you don't do it, those root knot nematodes will stay in your soil, and they'll attack the next crop and the next one and the next one. So you have to do stuff to counteract those, to get rid of them.
Yeah, wow. So
you can do that with cover crops. You don't have to use chemicals to do it.
Right. So we're using, again, naturally, we're using other plants to perform that function rather than putting a chemical out there.
Yeah, because I was listening to this soil documentary where like a handful of soil holds as many microbes as every person on the planet, and how these chemical fertilizers, how like you'll burn your hand if you put your hand straight in there, and it does the same thing to these microorganisms. So on top of the topsoil being carried off by the heavy disking, which y'all have said that they've kind of alleviated on because they're like, hey, this is really going to affect our business and the ability to grow food for the country and the world and our profits. They also spread these chemical fertilizers where they'll help the plants, but then they'll kill the microbes that would be able to digest the organic material back into a usable biocompost, and where they have to keep putting on more and more of these chemicals to upset the plant's ability to process it in the first place because they're just not able to.
Right, and that's truly what the word organic meant years ago, right? Was using natural items, plants, tilling that biocompost back into the soil and allowing it to, green manure, so to speak, to allow it to build the soil and heal the soil and help the soil. That's what organic truly means. It's not about what you put on your vegetable or the food that you come on the end. It's actually about how good of a steward you are of the soil itself.
Yes. So it's also my understanding that like with your I forgot. So how they have the soil is where they also like the pesticides, like keeping the insects off the plants. That was another thing of these giant 100-acre monocultures like corn and soybeans and everything, where they won't have a tree line, and where America doesn't really have like a prairie bird or anything like that like is comfortable in the bushes, that birds will only stray for feeding purposes about 200 yards from a wooded area. So these 100-acre cornfields and soybean fields don't really have that tree cover for those birds to feel comfortable. So they have these insect problems, and then they have to spray insecticides. But now they have to breed a crop of corn or soybean that can take that insecticide, and that doubles up upon itself. And that again comes into the organic thing, where a lot of people just really didn't know or care what the word organic was or meant maybe 10 years ago. And then everybody, like a couple of documentaries come out, and everybody's like, holy crap, this is like, how were we not told this? We've been lied to this whole time.
Well, so like two things there. When it comes to like the big monocultures and those big, I mean, the hundreds of acres of, you know, like, and it can be, especially when you're talking like California, you know, you're talking about they grow the tomatoes and the peppers and a lot of your vegetables, right? Or in Georgia, they grow a lot of cabbages and collard, like all that kind of stuff. And so, yes, they have huge fields. That's really hard for us to speak to because we've never lived in that situation or worked in that situation. And then the second thing with the organic thing, so when people heard the term organic and that it meant that there was supposed to be no pesticides, no chemicals, you know, so that became the it phrase, right, was organic. And so then they would pay more for it because that word organic was on there. And that's where the certification to me got really watered down, because then a lot of places they could put that word on if they meant this part of it, but it's not truly what these people think they're paying for.
Oh yeah.
Right. Like, so I mean, but as far as like all the big, huge, like the really big commercial farms and that's really hard for us to even speak to because we just don't work in that situation, right, or live in that.
I can speak to a little bit about what you were talking about from the quail perspective. Back in the early 2000s, I say Bureau of Land Management, but that wasn't what it was. It was basically the Department of Agriculture was providing people with grants to come back in and basically create that hedgerow you're talking about, or hedgerows that you're talking about between fields and on their property, to support the rehabilitation of the quail here in our environment, rehabilitate the quail environment. For that's just exactly what you were talking about. Mississippi State University was dealing with it a lot. I know they were still providing like 6,000 acres worth of. There was still money for 6,000 acres in the state of Alabama for farmers to go in and do that sort of stuff for grant money in 2010 that they were still trying to provide. I haven't went back and looked at it anymore to see if any more of that money has been used. But I know in 2010 they were still about 6,000 acres that they were trying to get done in the state of Alabama.
Wow.
Just getting you to come in and put, you know,
habitat,
quail habitat in and around your fields, and not essentially plant all the way to the tree line.
Okay.
It would help the quail come back and get into more of the natural environment that we used to have. But yeah, I don't know if that program's even still available. I mean, that was 10 years ago. So
yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't really see how that would I mean, I could see where it would work for like a smaller family farm, but as far as like, there's a lot of people now, like I remember it was like I'm 26 right now, so I can't say it was 20 years. But the statement was, I was maybe 10 or 13, but I remember like my grandfather, he was like, in 10 to 15 to 20 years, all you're going to see is pine trees and chicken houses, because that's what really started coming up down here. And even a little bit more, like you'd have like the bigger companies, but everybody found out it was like, hey, this is guaranteed money and so, but all you have to do is take out this loan, which the bank's guaranteed because of the farming department or Department of Agriculture, and how like a lot of people really they've really saturated the market here, pine trees and chicken houses. So I'm really not surprised those 6,000 acres was left, because everybody's like, why would we take this one-shot deal for an acre or two of bird habitat when Purdue or Wayne Farms will pay us or will guarantee us this paycheck, which that itself is kind of but
right. You could put that habitat around where your chicken houses are going to be.
Yeah. Well, right, actually, so, because there's a lot of places that I've heard where they don't want a lot of migrating birds of any kind, because they claim they'll carry diseases to poison the chicken houses.
Right, but a quail's not a migratory bird like a goose, like a Canadian goose or something like that. A quail's not a migratory bird. A quail is what's the word I'm looking for? Native bird to this area. So they're not migratory. So quail don't fly from, up north. They don't migrate during the seasonal change. A quail is an actual native bird to this area.
Yes, but they would have the potential to come in contact with those migratory birds. Right. I think that was their argument.
Right. Okay, I can see that, but
so even those places, they wouldn't want you to do that. They'd be like, hey, it's like something we don't really want. This is what our scientists are telling us that we're paying for. So it's not like they could influence that to begin with.
Yeah, but I can't speak to that because I don't have chicken houses, but I know where there's a lot of chicken houses at, and there's a lot of just regular wooded habitat around them. So they're going to have those birds anyway, whether they put the habitat in or not.
Quail and dove, and
right.
I mean that's just.
I mean, you're going to have the native birds in the area anyway, because you're not putting it downtown Enterprise. You're going to put it out where an old field was, where you're going to have that habitat that's going to grow up around it.
Or they're going to log the area to put the chicken houses in. So, I mean, they're still going to be there. They're just in the woods. And
right. But, I don't have chicken houses and never have, so I really can't speak to what the requirements are for having a chicken house.
Yeah. Well, y'all are one of the few, because that seems like a hot ticket item for a lot of people down here. They're like, our own chicken house, and we can support ourselves. And like, yeah, no, you can totally support yourself with a chicken house. Just sign this contract and go get a $1 million loan from the bank.
Yeah, well, we don't have the land for one, so
yeah, you have to have a lot more land for that than what I've got.
Yeah, right. But it really is crazy. So what is y'all's what is y'all's? It's so bad. Everybody's going to be like, it's like, yeah, you're really throwing those y'alls out. I've really gotten a lot of comments about that. But so what is y'all's end game with this? Is this just something like y'all, like a lot of people, like they work jobs, they're 9 to 5s, they really don't like it, and they're like, I just want something a lot more simpler. Because again, with this virus, that's another thing I've really heard about, where people is like, I don't want to live in the city anymore. Maybe I can just have me a little something out here in the country or a suburb. Or is that something what y'all are trying to do or attempting?
Okay.
So somewhere in the middle, I guess you would say. I mean, I work a 9 to 5 job, 8 to 5 job, whatever you want to call it.
When you're not telecommuting right now.
So the main thing is, I guess, preparedness. And I'm not saying that from a prepper's perspective. But what happens when we started this before the virus kicked off, right? So this is not just necessarily something that we started because of the virus. We've been working this for probably 2016, 2017 when we lived in Enterprise. We had some small hydroponic stuff set up. We had small garden plots when we were living in town before we decided to move back out here. Mainly, we're getting up to our in our retirement years or getting close to our retirement years. So just trying to look at things that we can do to be more self-sufficient, more to do a little better, I guess is probably the best way to say it, than not necessarily, if you think about a single meal for a single person for lunch is $10, right? So if you do $10 a day for lunch times 5, that's $50 a week times, 52 weeks in a year. Now you're looking at about 50, what is that, $5,200.
Yeah, it really is.
So
a month, or a year that you just giving away. So if you can, raise your own food, provide your own self with substance of some sort, right? So if I can, using those numbers, if 2 nights a week we can provide 100% of our meals off of our own property, well, that's 20, 30,
a lot of money.
That's $60 a week that we didn't have to go spend at the grocery store, spend at the wherever. So now you multiply that out. It's just, I guess, a financial thing to a certain extent when you look at, hey, eventually we're going to be retired and living on some semblance of a fixed income. So you want to be able to.
Well, and I think part of it too is like our grandmother's garden.
Right.
Like my grandparents gardened a lot, and just wanting to live simpler and not being, we don't have to be so reactive to, oh my gosh, Walmart is out of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Really affect us, we have 2 freezers full. We have a whole cupboard full of food that we've canned. We have our dehydrator,
Right.
We would like to get quail for the meat and the eggs. We'd like to get rabbits for the meat and for the manure, for compost. And deer, if he hunts and gets deer, or he went fishing and we have fish in the freezer, So I mean,
well, I know my lettuce isn't going to get recalled.
Right? Yeah. We don't have to worry about stuff getting recalled because we know how it's been grown and what's been put on it or not been put on it. So and that's a lot of security in that.
Yeah. And a lot of that's really been happening. I don't know, because I can't remember what the effect is called, but it's kind of like when you get a new car and then suddenly you start noticing your own car driving up and down. That effect apparently kind of translates. It's like, I don't know if there are more of these recalls or if that's just something I've noticed, so I notice it more. But it seems like there have been a lot of these recalls, just like more frequently throughout the years. I think
part of that too, though, is, and I don't want to get super political, but I think a lot of that is, one, people, especially like in restaurants, where you hear like of a restaurant that is, I got food poisoning or that, whatever it may be, right? I think that workers can be lazy and maybe don't do everything they're supposed to do. I think also that some people, when they buy, say, salad mix out of the bag or the little plastic box at the grocery store, and it says wash 3 times. Okay, fine. You still need to wash it, but maybe you're not doing that. Or, maybe it's a transit thing, or maybe it's sat in a warehouse somewhere or whatever. But then that gets put on the media, whether it be the regular, NBC, ABC, CBS, whatever. And now they want ratings, so they're going to sensationalize something that maybe it's not as bad as they make it out to be, or maybe that's why you're hearing about it more, is because now they're talking about it more. Yeah. A lot of stuff these days is like that because, where you have social media and streaming and everybody's watching all the news and everything, as opposed to when they had to read a newspaper, and they were just hearing more about local stuff or statewide as opposed to worldwide all the time, 24/7.
Right.
So, I mean, I think do I think it's out there? Absolutely, I think it's out there. But do I think it gets Do I think there's some fear mongering or some sensationalizing of it? Yes, I do. But that, again, grow your own. It's not that hard. You don't have to have a big space. Like, you can get a little arrow garden and put lettuce and grow lettuce on your countertop. I mean, it's not hard. And it's something where if people just took the time to learn, I mean, you can take a cattle mineral tub, maybe get 3 or 4 of them, and you could have lettuce in one and tomatoes in one. And, I mean, you're probably not going to grow corn in it, but I mean, you could do cucumbers in them. I mean, you don't have to have a big space.
No, you really don't.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to have a garden our size to even if you just grew enough, maybe a cherry tomato plant and a couple green peppers and some lettuce and maybe some onions, you could have like 3 or 4 little tubs of stuff, right? And so maybe that's your salad. And at least if you're eating your own salad, then whatever else you have to buy, you're not going to see those recalls on Yukon potatoes. I've never heard of a recall on Yukon potatoes. No. Or if it comes to meat, there's a lot of local farmers that grow chickens, and they, have them locally for sale. Or like Working Cows Dairy Farm.
Yeah.
They sell beef, they sell milk, they sell cheese. So you can go to a local place that is, I mean, they have criteria that they have to meet for state requirements, Yeah. And then you can go and you can see how that animal was raised, or you can see, I mean, they're more than happy to answer anybody's questions, There's a lot of places like that. I mean, we bought a quarter beef from a local rancher, and he actually opened up his own processing place. You don't have to buy stuff at, Walmart or Publix or, do you have to do a little investigation? Do you have to find them? Yes. Do you want to get reviews from other people? Has anybody ever bought meat from so-and-so, or have you ever bought vegetables from so-and-so? Sure, why not? And if the farmer doesn't want to answer your questions, then don't buy from them. Go find somebody that will answer your questions and will say, yes, come see my place and I'll show you how I grow my stuff. I mean, I'm always happy if somebody says, hey, can I come see? Absolutely, come on out. What do you want to know? Open book, transparency.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like, a lot of those farmers, like a lot of these small farmers and ranchers and chicken farmers that sell to the public, like if you're like, hey, can I come over and see how you do your stuff? And they are like adamantly no, you'll never buy that. But at the same time, we have these laws in place where the different beef and chicken, where they have these gag laws where if like an employee sees some funny stuff going on, it's illegal for them to report it, because, and that's a weird thing where those farmers who will never, 9 times out of 10, will never deny you access, because that's how they raise their stuff and that's how healthy that stuff is by comparison. But at the same time, we'll openly just buy this stuff where if you went to any, like if you wanted to walk through a Tyson plant, you'd have to be on like an interview, because they'd never let just any old body in there.
So part of that too, though, like we have friends that are local farmers and they grow a lot of food and they sell it through Market at Dothan, right? They are working on their organic certification. Now, because of that, do they open their farm up to people to come out and see and ask questions, and they have workshops and stuff out there for different things? Yes, but when it comes to their tunnel house where they grow that food that they are organically certifying, you can look through the window, you can look through the sidewalls, but you can't actually go in there and that's biosecurity, meaning that whatever you've got on your shoes that you tracked in from your house into your car onto their farm, they don't want you walking through their tunnel house with it. So there is a give and take there. There is you have to understand, that there are some restrictions to it. They're not just going to let you go all over their place, walk wherever you want, do whatever you want. They're going to show you around, but they are going to say, can't go in the tunnel house, or you can't go here. But biosecurity, there's a reason for it, and they're happy to explain it to you.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, like that's completely understandable. But even if you wanted to go to another agriculture place and like show me your stuff, it's like, hey, you need to get off my property or I'm calling the cops. So right. You're right. They will definitely let you on, but these companies, they won't even let you on the property. And I honestly think we are approaching, like, once everything opens back up, like, people are really going to like start accepting this and start trending towards that more local grown organic, because all these beef processors that you like, it's processed in the USA. Yeah, it's processed, but those whole cattle's come in from like Mexico or Canada, probably not Canada, but like Mexico or something where they have those stockyards.
Well, there's a lot of, so I grew up on a cattle ranch in Nebraska, right? And a lot of that says about the beef cattle and that, so they sell these cattle at market, right? And then a lot of times they'll ship the cattle overseas. It gets processed over there and then brought back. And on the label, it'll say product of USA. Well, yes, it's a product of the USA, but it wasn't necessarily processed in the USA.
Or they'll bring it over in like a giant tub that it's like maybe 1,000 pounds of ground beef, but then they repackage it. So now it's packaged. And so, but yeah, no, like they really do a lot of that stuff, and people they really don't realize that.
They don't, right. They don't. So you really have to do your research and find out also, who owns what plants,
Exactly.
Tyson isn't a USA owned plant. There's a lot of things that, maybe one company owns it, but then you have, who's the parent company and where is that stuff going? What's the full route? Because it's not just going A to B.
Right. I mean, there's a peanut processing plant that had always, my entire life, I graduated with one of the parents' kids. He graduated high school with me. His parents that owned this huge peanut packing plant or processing buying point in Geneva County still has the family name on the sign, but it was sold out about 5 years ago to a company out of India. So
wow.
And they were the main.
And they processed every peanut that went through that processing plant went to Mars.
So like M&Ms and Snickers and that kind of stuff. But now it's owned by a company out of India.
Wow, that's amazing.
The same Geneva County farmers, or the same local, Wiregrass or South Alabama farmers, are still planting and harvesting the peanuts. It's still going through that plant, but it's not owned by them anymore. So
yeah, so you take that as a grain of, with whatever grain of salt you want to take it with, but so it's understanding who owns what, right? The whole, know your farmer, know your food kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, I really do think that's going to become a more prioritized thing where they're going to spend that little bit more money on food. Because, like, if you get like a dozen of organic, like, not even organic, but I mean, of course they're going to be organic because they're like free-range eggs. Like, there's a difference between that 60-cent dozen at Walmart and these like dark orange eggs you get from like a chicken like in the backyard. And like I really do think like people are going to like realize 60, like what's a dozen of organic eggs, like $2.50.
So I buy eggs from a local friend that's in Banks, because I know her, not because of any no special reason I go to Banks, but because that's where she lives. But she charges me $3 a dozen, so it's a really good deal. We have a guy that works with Leonard that he has chickens, and he saw our sweet potato harvest. He's like, hey, I want to work a deal. Absolutely, we will trade you a dozen eggs for a dozen or whatever,
5 pounds of sweet potatoes or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we're all about that, especially if we know the people, But something you also have to be aware of is, like, a lot of people want to go to farmers markets because they want to buy that locally grown food, right?
Yeah.
And for the most part, I think you probably are. But I also know that there are, and it depends on the farmers market, because the state does have requirements for farmers markets. If they have there's a special, like, they'll take certain dollars, and some of it's for seniors and some of it's for there's a special program. Anyway, if the state authority finds out that farmers markets are, like, say you have a farmer and he doesn't have a tunnel house, right? He grows certain things certain times a year, but other times a year he doesn't, right? For whatever reason. He may go down to Florida or up to Birmingham to the big distribution warehouses and buy vegetables there, and then come down and sell it at his farmer's market stand. And if people don't have the wherewithal to go, yeah, you're not growing avocados in South Alabama in whatever, or you're not growing tomato, and ask the question, oh, do you have a tunnel house, or, oh, and sometimes you'll look and they'll forget to take the stickers off of it and it'll say avocado, product of Mexico. Yeah.
I have looked at picking up plums, and I thought, these plums seem to be, I don't know that they're in season at farmer's market before. And I pick up the plums and I look at it and it have a sticker on it that says product of South Africa.
No.
Oh, okay.
So not all farmers markets are the same, and not all farmers, and some of those farmers, you may have 80% of them that truly are only growing what they make or grow or whatever, right? But you may have those 2 or 3 that are doing that, and the farmers market manager probably knows that's what they're doing and is just not making them adhere to the specific rules. If the state ever finds out, though, they'll shut them down.
Here's what I will tell you. If you're going to go to farmers markets and things like that, know what's in season, know what can be grown at a given time of the year, right? In Alabama, unless you've got a tunnel house, you're not growing fresh tomatoes in December. October, November, December, January.
It's too
February.
cold.
It's too cold. Just not going to happen. So
now, if you have a tunnel house,
that's what I said. If you got a tunnel house, you could be doing that. But if you don't have one, you're not going to be doing that. This time this time of year, you're going to be getting your cabbage and your collards and your turnips and rutabagas and that sort of stuff. More of your cool weather crops type stuff.
Okay.
Peppers not going to be grown unless you got a tunnel house in Alabama in
and a lot of it, you should be able to, look up their farm. Do they have a Facebook page? Do they have a website? Go look it up. Go or talk to them. Ask them questions. But think about what you're asking them. Because they're not stupid. Like, they're gonna answer to a certain degree, right? Yes, I brought this today. Well, yeah, they brought it. Did they grow it? But in there. Don't get me wrong, there are some great farmers markets around here. But there are some ones that, no, not so much.
Okay. So explain to everybody real quick, because when you say something is in season, we all hear that term, but nobody I have some rudimentary farming knowledge, just where I grew up, but I don't know what's in season. Like, explain to people not what the seasons are, but let's go from the seasons and what can be grown. Like, starting in January, what can you start with, or how soon can you start growing what, and then leading up from there at the end of the year.
So one thing to understand is in South Alabama, we're in zone 8 where we are right here, right? So even some of zone 7, zone 8, zone 9, zone 10, that's going to be like Florida, very South Texas, we're really, really lucky because there's a lot of stuff that we can grow almost year round. There's very few things that we can't grow year round. And it also depends on what what systems you have in place to grow year round. You know, are you going to put frost blankets on things? Are you going to put row covers on things? Do you have tunnel houses or greenhouses? You know, that kind of stuff, right? So all those things make a big difference. Us, we don't have any of that, or we don't utilize any of that at the point right now, where we just have our in-ground garden plots. So like right now, we're growing broccoli, cauliflower, collards, mustards, English peas, whole beans, kohlrabi, lettuces like romaine, buttercrunch, almost any of your lettuces, spinach, kale, rutabagas, turnips, radishes, carrots, onions.
So carrots are a little bit of a misnomer. You're going to plant carrots now, and they're going to be ready early spring, right?
Same with onions.
So, and onions.
Like they're 100 days. So you're looking at 3 months before you're going to harvest them.
Right. So they've got a long harvest window, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to, what they call overwinter them. Garlic, same sort of thing. You're going to plant it, and it's going to grow basically all winter, and you're going to harvest it April, May time frame.
But now we wouldn't grow any of those things here in the summer. It would be way too hot.
Right. So those things, then you will, so when you get into the mid-March, April time frame, now you're looking at tomatoes,
peppers,
probably tomatoes. You probably could get squash, zucchini,
eggplant,
cucumbers, eggplant, that kind of stuff. Then when you get into kind of April, May, June, now you're talking peppers,
corn,
okra, that sort of stuff. When you get into the July, August, while you're in that April, May, June time frame, you can still do cucumbers, squash, that sort of stuff. Watermelons, those should still be grown. You're going to probably plant, looking at around the Memorial Day weekend, middle of June, somewhere in that you'll be getting your potatoes that went in early February, mid to early February out of the ground, getting sweet potatoes in the ground.
Potato, like Irish potatoes, like your Yukon Golds, your white potatoes, that kind of stuff.
Your bacon potatoes, roasted potatoes, French fry potatoes, that sort of stuff. Then you'll plant your sweet potatoes. We follow our regular potatoes with sweet potatoes because they're not technically the same family of plant.
Right.
Then those come out about September, October time frame. So it's just, I guess the best thing to do is to get kind of a garden planner, even whether you're going to garden or not, and just kind of look in your area as to what should be coming off, what should be, do your research, so to speak. Understand what you should see at a farmer's market at what time, right? So peaches, fruit trees, that sort of stuff. You got long windows and when those things can come off. You've got some peach trees that'll start producing as early as April, probably, and then you've got other peach trees that will still be producing in June, July time frame.
Or you also have so we have fig trees, and you have different varieties of fig trees. You'll have early producers, a regular or mid producer, and you have late producers. And people will have all three types of those trees so that they can have a continual harvest from, say, March, April, all the way up until October or so.
Wow.
So when it comes to fruit trees, you have to understand that you have those different varieties, and those are the reasons why they have those, is so that they can have a longer harvest season. They're not exactly the same kinds of figs, especially for us, but they're still figs. They're going to be just different varieties. It's like different varieties of tomatoes. You know how you have a dark purple tomato, you have a yellow tomato, you have a red tomato, an orange tomato, a green tomato, So they're all different kinds of things. Like a yellow tomato, a lot of those are a low acid tomato. So if you have somebody that suffers from acid reflux or something, and they say, oh, I can't have tomatoes, we'll give them a yellow tomato and just, and make sure they don't eat the seeds, because a lot of times the skin and the seeds that's in the tomatoes is what really upsets them. But a yellow tomato is very low acid, so that shouldn't bother them at all. So that people need to learn what they can eat or when they should eat.
Yeah, so you just said purple tomato, and there's going to be a lot of people watching this. They're going to be like, there's no such thing as a purple tomato. Like, they only know those red tomatoes. It's like purple, yellow, green, orange. They're tomatoes, not the rainbow. They have no idea what you're talking about.
So there is and you're going to have people that say, well, green tomatoes, that's just an unripe tomato. That's not true. There is a German green, Granny Aunt Ruby's German green tomato is an actual variety of a tomato. When it is ripe and ready, it is soft and green. It's just not hard like a regular. I mean, it gets soft. It's green the whole time. It never changes colors.
Wow.
A purple tomato. The most popular one is probably the Cherokee purple, right? There's a variety that you got. There are a couple hybrids that have some disease resistance built into them that are, I think it's called Purple Boy. It's a purple tomato. Then you have the Lemon Boy, Sun Gold. Those are red. Those are actual yellow, kind of orange tomatoes. So they never actually turn completely red. So.
Yeah, see, nobody knows what you're talking about. There's going to be like 5 or 6 people. It's like, I know what they're talking about, but everybody else is going to be like, no, they're still red tomatoes.
Oh, come on. You can get yellow tomatoes in the grocery store.
Maybe. They're like, oh, those are just weird tomatoes. They're probably going to ask for a discount because they're like, that's not a red tomato. If I do want to buy this, but I want a discount with it because it's not a red tomato. They're just they have no idea.
So it's funny you say that, because that's one of the things when I was teaching junior master gardeners to kids, right? One of the things I would do every week is I would go to the grocery store and I would buy a vegetable or a fruit that maybe they've never had before, because mom or dad didn't know what it was, didn't know how to prepare it, didn't know, how do you eat that? What do you do with it? And we would have a history lesson and a geography lesson, and we would do a taste test. And so, it might be star fruit, it might be dragon fruit, it might be, like right now at Publix, you'll see the big old jackfruits, and people are like, what do you do with that,
Jackfruit.
But do you buy it at Publix? I mean, they're the size of a watermelon. They're huge.
Oh, yeah, no. My wife is Vietnamese, so we actually go to the market in Atlanta, the Hong Kong market, and they have those things year round. Like, they ship those in from Thailand,
right.
And they're watermelons. They're huge.
Yeah.
Have y'all ever had
do what?
Have y'all ever had a durian? Have you ever seen durian before?
Uh-uh.
So it's like a jackfruit, but for whatever reason, be it God or evolution, it's decided that it wants to taste good, but it also wants to smell like someone's burning a body that's liquefied. Like, it's bad. Like, it's illegal in airports because I remember my cousin has a Korean husband or boyfriend. They're engaged, but at the time they were boyfriend and girlfriend. And they're living together. But they had a durian that she had cut open and left overnight, and he walks in, and they have this little condo, so he wakes up and walks into the thing and goes and just panics. It's like, the gas is leaking, it's like it was the durian. He thought the gas was leaking because that's what it smelled off at a distance.
So that's some kind of evolutionary way to get predators from eating it, right?
To just not eat it, and then those Asians are just like, and then they're just like, yeah, no, we like the smell. So like a lot of them, it's like you either love the smell and the taste once you taste it, and you're like, yeah, your body's like, okay, so we're gonna like the smell because it tastes good, or people are just like literally literally puking, like it's bad to some extent.
It'd be like me and liver. I don't like liver.
Well, I was going to say cilantro because cilantro tastes like soap to me. Everybody's like, oh, I love cilantro. I'm like, it tastes like I'm eating a bar of soap. What are you talking about?
Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, you can go on you can go on, you can Google it or you can go on Pinterest and they'll have a sheet that will say, like March, what's in season in March. But you also have to know what zone are you in? What growing zone are you in? Like we're in zone 8 here, but what is in season here is not the same as what's in season in Nebraska or in season in Maine, I mean, like, we're not going to grow maple trees down here and get syrup. That's not going to happen. So
I don't even know what would happen to a maple tree down here.
Nothing. It wouldn't make it. It wouldn't live.
It wouldn't. It just straight up not live. It's so used to the cold. It just wouldn't do it.
Right. That's like apples. So there are most apple trees. You have to have like 300. No.
200, I think.
300 cold hours.
Cold
hours. So 300 hours below a certain temperature, and it doesn't get cold enough down here. Now, there are varieties we can grow down here, but so like I would never suggest going to Lowe's and buying an apple tree, because I'm not going to promise you that Lowe's knows what kind of apple trees grow best in our area.
Right.
They're just a big corporation buying apple trees from nurseries,
Wow.
So you have to, you need to, when you're going to do stuff like that, especially if you're buying, fruit trees or vegetables or whatever, you need to talk to somebody local who can help you do what's best for what is your land shaded or is it full sun? Is it, hard ground or is it real sandy? You need to know and do soil tests. Will that even grow in my soil? Do I need to lime my pecan trees or is my soil fine for what they are? Unless you're going to do container gardening, there's more than just digging up some soil and putting some vegetables in the ground.
Yep.
Yeah. And I've seen a lot of really interesting things with those container gardeners. Like you said, like you get those lick blocks, like they'll come in these giant jugs. And then in all honesty, unless somebody uses it, like unless the wife uses it, like they'll just like give them away or throw them away on Facebook. And I even saw this one thing where someone got a 10, like, I don't know if it was maybe 10 foot. I'm sure it was originally 10 foot, but then they cut it up and made a big cylinder and filled it up with hay and straw and then put potatoes, like a layer of potatoes and then straw for a foot and then potatoes and just stacked it up. And when they're done, they just clip the zip ties, open it up, and then just potatoes everywhere. And it kind of looked like the plants were foliaging, kind of like your potatoes in your compost pile, where they're just because they don't really grow like that in the ground for whatever reason. They like that really loose dirt.
So, and there's tomatoes and potatoes are you have indeterminate and determinate, and even potatoes are like that too. So a determinate tomato stays more bush type, and an indeterminate tomato is more vine-like and needs to be trellised. So potatoes can be like that too, and so that's where they're doing those potato towers, where they're planting and then adding soil or straw or whatever, and then the plant grows up some more and they're doing it, and that's what you're getting with that.
Yeah, but I've heard the potato towers where they will do it as boxes and then the single plant itself, but this was a wire mesh to where they had different layers of separate plants and where they would grow out the side, so it literally looked like a giant 6-8 foot column of potatoes. I mean, it really was fantastic. And then he cut it down and just hundreds of pounds of potatoes just spilled out.
Yeah.
Like, so you said that you had a junior's farmer or gardener. Tell me more about that.
So Junior Master Gardeners so you have the Master Gardeners, which is for adults, and the Master Gardeners work through your land grant colleges. So like Auburn University sponsors the Alabama Master Gardeners, and we have curriculum that we have to go through in a class that we have to go through, and so many volunteer hours that we have to go through. And then once you've completed all that, you're a certified Master Gardener. And then you can specialize in certain areas. You have a lot of people that like to do, you have people that'll specialize in roses and people will specialize in camellias and all these different things, or, like we specialize in veggies, that kind of stuff. Junior Master Gardeners is where the Master Gardeners and the land-grant colleges partnered up with 4-H. And so you're teaching kids how to grow vegetables, how to grow, you're also talking to them about soil, the soil life cycle, the water, you're talking to them about sun, temperature. So you incorporate, it's almost like a STEM curriculum.
Pollinators.
You talk to them about pollinators, you talk to them about compost, fertilizers like, worms, that kind of thing.
Okay. So for the adults, so for the kids, that's kind of like just like a lead up class to the adult version. What is the adult version? What does that normally look like as far as like curriculum, how long it takes and what it entails?
So your Master Gardener program, you need to talk to your local extension office and they'll tell you if they are partnered with a Master Gardener group to offer a class. The classes are approximately 12 weeks, 10 weeks. 10 or 12 weeks. 10 weeks, I think. And then you have, the books are like this thick. It's a huge book. And you're going to go through soil conservation, where they're going to talk about soil tests. You're going to talk about landscaping. You're going to talk about insects and pests and fertilizers, and you're going to talk about the plant life cycle. You're going to talk about trees and fruits and stuff. About anything you could think of that can be grown, that's what they're going to talk about. Composting. So each week you'll have a typically 4-hour class. Like they're usually starting at like 8 in the morning. They'll run till noon. And so you'll have your class and you may go through a section or 2 sections of the book. And then at the end of that time frame, you have 50 hours of volunteering that you need to do, whether it be with, like, say, Dothan Area Botanical Gardens or the Master Gardeners. If you're that particular group has a, maybe they have the ones in the Wiregrass, they have a greenhouse, so you work with their greenhouse. Or maybe they do a Habitat for Humanity project, or maybe it's something where you work with a school like a Vivian B. Adams and help them with their tunnel houses. All kinds of, the extension office can help you find, or the Master Gardeners can help you find help you complete your volunteer hours. And then once you're done with your volunteer hours, and you're active in that, then you get your certification. And then a lot of times you'll go to a once-a-month meeting just to kind of stay up on what's going on. And you can also do more volunteering there. They have conventions. It's, it's really cool. It's everybody, like-minded people getting together to share their interests.
Okay. Is there like a certification fee, or is this all just free through the state of Alabama?
So the classes, different areas are going to charge more or less for their classes. It kind of depends on how the local Master Gardeners and the Extension Office want to do it. They're going to do a background check, so that fee's included in that. You also have to pay for your books or your curriculum. And then they're going to bring in, a lot of times, especially with our classes around here, we bring in professors from Auburn University come and teach different parts of the classes. Extension agents come in and teach different parts of the classes. So I think the fee here, the last class I knew about, I want to say was like $135, and it covered the entire thing.
That's not bad.
It's not bad. And then sometimes if they are having, a lot of times you have to have a minimum of 10, 12, 15 people to even hold the class. So sometimes if they're worried about not getting enough people, because if it's a, Wednesday morning from 8 to noon, you got a lot smaller group of people to draw from than if you held a night class or a Saturday class. because most people are at work during that time.
Right.
So sometimes your master gardener, your local master gardener, or maybe 2 or 3 local master gardener organizations will get together and they'll offer a grant and say, hey, we'll pay so much of your fee for, we want to make sure that we have this many people sign up. So for the first, 6 people, we'll pay so much of this fee. Do they always offer that? No. Does every organization or does every master gardener class have that? No. But it's worth asking about, because you may then, the extension agent may go to a local master gardener group and be like, hey, we have this person, they really want to take the class, but they're asking if they can get a grant to help pay for it. The worst they can say is no, but they may say yes, especially if they're really wanting to get that class filled so that they don't have to cancel the whole thing.
Yeah, I know Wallace Community College tried to do that thing with a logistics program. And I was kind of into that, and they're like, at this time, it used to be $200, but now the state says it's free, but we still have to get those 7 or 8 people, and they just couldn't do it.
Wow.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people because I used to have a game where you'd have farming levels, and you get a level 100 farmer, and you'd have this master gardener, and you'd have a cape and stuff to give you extra little perks, and there's an actual certification that's master gardener. It's that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
Now for the more advanced study, like you said, once you have your master gardener certification and you want to specialize in roses or corn or potatoes, so is that a different thing, or is that more of a self-study curriculum?
So there's a couple of different things. You will have master gardeners who also belong to the Camellia Society or the Rose Society, and they may specialize. Maybe they only grow roses, right? So you have that specialization, but there is also a certification called an advanced master gardener, and that's where that master gardener say, if I wanted to go on and be look, I really want to focus on vermicomposting, so then I would have to have so many I would have to attend so many conferences, and it could be online, but classes, conferences, read certain things, do certain things to complete that advanced certification. I have to have so many hours, have so many CEUs, and I also have to be able to give say discussions, so volunteer to go to master gardener groups or schools or whatever and give talks, 20-30 minute, maybe not even that long, and give talks on my specific area of expertise that I want to be an advanced master gardener in, a demonstration, something like that. And actually my friends and I, the ones that I was telling you about, have the tunnel house where they have biosecurity, and yes, you can come see, but you can't go in the tunnel house. We had a vermicomposting demonstration set up at Sampson Elementary School, and they canceled it because it was the week or two right when COVID was coming out, and they're yeah, it was in March when it was supposed to be. So there's a lot of stuff that the master gardener class that's going on right now in Dale County, they for the first time offered it 100% online. And it's a big learning curve, because always before you had to attend every class, you had to be in person, and they wouldn't do them online. And so I think this is true of not just master gardener classes, but a lot of telecommuting and the new version of homeschooling, where they have to be able to offer this stuff online. I think that you're going to see that's going to become a new norm, because it's a lot easier for people to attend those classes if they can do it online, because then you can get the stay-at-home mom who doesn't have somebody to watch her kids, but maybe she can put on a movie for them in one room while she attends class on her laptop in the living room or something, So I think that that's maybe one of the upside things, is more and more companies being more flexible with telecommuting or Zoom conference calls or, you know, the online classes like the Master Gardener class.
Yeah. And like we were saying before, a lot of people, and again, like the companies realizing that it'd just be easier for people to work at home. I really think that it's going to get to a point sometime where, like we were talking about, like Jeff Bezos is going to open his own free for everybody or free for low income people pre-K system, or he was talking about that. I really think like it's not going to take too long for either the school system itself or for homeschool system and programs to start implementing like Oculus Rift VR devices for school. Because if you think about it, like a book itself is maybe like $200, like a McGraw-Hill like textbook is like $200. But this new like the Oculus Rift Quest 2, it's like $300, and you could just pre-program it with classes and give it out to a student and take it back at the end of the day. And it really would not be inconceivable for that person to strap on their thing and spend some money on have somebody like really enthusiastically program lessons instead of having this teacher that just sits here because they've sat here for the past 10 years of their life teaching the same thing over and over again to the same age group. I mean, but just think about like you're teaching astronomy and then the teacher snaps their fingers and you're on the surface of Titus on the like right outside of Jupiter. Like I'd never not pay attention. Like I failed my 10th grade history class because it was at the end of the day and I kind of already knew this stuff, but like was fading in and out of like, so I failed off of like a participation and in classroom stuff. I went to summer school for 3 days and like I was like, bye. Like day 3, like you're done already. I'm like, yeah, I know this stuff. But like a lot of kids, like they'll get bored and they'll like play around or fool around or like fall asleep or what have you. But once that happens, it's like that's a whole new level of like entertainment and like keeping their attention.
Yeah. Yep.
So y'all do homeschool, right? Is that something that y'all did like as a COVID thing, or y'all just like we don't like the state education system and Alabama's not very controlling anyway how we do it?
It was we started homeschooling 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think so.
5 years ago, and it was just I think some of it it's really, really individual. Like it's what works best for your family, what works best for your student mostly. You know, because all students have strengths and weaknesses, and if you can figure those out and you can figure out how to work to your students' strengths so that you can get, you know, like our chemistry class is not a traditional dissect a frog, you know, beakers and stuff chemistry cut. Our chemistry class is chemistry in the kitchen. There's all kinds of chemistry, but it's in the kitchen. So it's how do you make whipped cream, you know, and how do, you know, the different ways that water affects different foods. And I mean, there's also, you know, history, and you can incorporate so much into just your regular home life, you know. I mean, like sweet potatoes. Okay, let's talk about sweet potatoes. How are they grown? What's the history of them? You know, let's talk about George Washington Carver, you know, you know, in baking something as opposed to boiling something as opposed to, you know, so homeschooling is a way to get really, really good at finding out the best way for your student to excel and still meet high school graduation requirements.
Yeah, because you're right. There is a lot of stuff where you can do like a science, and then you run into the history, and then you run into like the social science behind that person who may have had an effect on history. But a science class can't really go into that, where they are talking about that we're talking about plants that produce like peanuts, where the fruit itself or the nut itself is underground, where we also talk about I think was it George Washington Carver again with the peanuts?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and you can't really do that. You can't break into a history lesson, and then you can't break into that sociology lesson behind other contributing factors and stuff like that, because you have to stay in biology class.
Right. Well, and like, so a lot of schools, you know, they're teaching math classes. Well, yeah, we're teaching math class too, but our math class may be, okay, we're going to talk about budgeting and bills and, you know, savings and stuff that really she's going to need to know, you know, how to figure out income tax, how to do sales tax, how to figure out sales percentages. If you going to go dress shopping and you only have this much to spend, or they're on sale and it's 40% off. Okay, how much is that now? If this is the regular price, you know, math that will work on an everyday real life, you know, I don't ever use calculus. Ever. You know, I'm never going to use calculus, but I can figure out percentages, you know, or I can figure out, okay, if I want to make sure that my garden gets an inch of water a week that it needs, how long do I need to water it for? You know, what's my flow rate of my water? How big is the garden? How long does it take to get an inch of water to my garden? If I, you know, how long do I have to have the water on? Is it 2 hours? Is it 4 hours? You know, that's math, but that's also science. It's also, I mean, there's chemistry, you know, how much is going to evaporate. So there's there's a lot more to education than just your traditional class offerings, you know, like she doesn't care about speaking Spanish, which is 9 times out of 10, if they're offering a foreign language, it's Spanish. She doesn't care about that, but she's teaching herself conversational Korean.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, that's a lot. Yeah, like a lot of people, like, you really want to choose your own language, but I mean, Spanish is the second most spoken language in the U.S. So, of course, it's a very appealing second language. But again, somebody may want to do Korean, Japanese, Vietnamese, Thai.
Well, and think about it. They used to offer home ec classes or home economics classes in school. They all used to offer shop classes in school, you know, but they don't necessarily offer that anymore. But I'll tell you what, she was out there with us, you know, building her art studio, you know, putting in walls and and that's shop class, you know, or, you know,
how to read a tape measure,
how to do her own laundry, you know, how to clean certain things, you know, it's all how to sew, you know, how important is it to know how to sew on a button? Do you want to pay somebody to sew on a button? I mean, a lot of people take it to the dry cleaners, to the seamstress that's associated with the dry cleaners. It's a button. Learn how to sew it on, you know?
Right.
How to sew that hem back in. You know, she makes her own Halloween costumes. She doesn't go buy them. She makes her own, you know? So, yeah.
Like you could easily have a $250 polo shirt or a collared shirt on and break those buttons off. That shirt's useless unless you know how to sew that button back on.
Well, and the buttons are typically on the shirt. They're down at the bottom. Yeah, you just gotta figure out
like right here. We'll have some extra buttons.
But like, so we were talking about, you know, chemistry in the kitchen. So she cooked supper last night. Some big things. Like, I purposefully was not in the house, and what she learned really quickly last night was time management. You have, how long is it going to take to do this? How long is it going to take to do that? And you also have to learn multitasking. You have to be able to do 2 or 3 things at a time to get that meal prepared to come all out at the same time, to all be ready at the same time. But how long is it going to take for you to chop something? And when do you put this on as opposed to when you put chicken on, you know? So those are all really valuable skills. And it's not just how to learn, okay, it's going to take me 3 hours to do homework after school. That's time management, but it's not practicing day-to-day time management.
Oh, absolutely. Like, a lot of people could, like, hear this conversation and be like, oh, you're teaching cooking. Oh, you're teaching finances instead of calculus. And maybe they can get past the Alabama high school graduate requirements. But the second those same kids that they may be bragging on, it's like, well, my kid was a top in her calculus class or his calculus class. The second they're thrown out into the real world, they're like, Mom, I'm eating like Walmart and pack noodles because I either have no idea how to support myself or I just never had the ability to learn financing or anything like that. So you can be book smart.
Mom and Dad did it all for them and they never learned how to do it for themselves. Or how many people, went to college, got a 4-year degree, but they don't even work in that career field. But they got, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 worth of debt, and they're not working in that career field. Whereas you have some kid that went to Wallace College to the lineman's class, finished school, got his certification in 2 years, and now he's making $60,000, $70,000 a year, and school has long since been paid off. Because it wasn't a 4 year, it was a 2-year certification. So
yeah,
I'm a big fan of technical schools.
Yeah, no, really.
She does
really was
online art classes. We're not. There's a lot of non-traditional schooling that you can do. And homeschooling and what everybody was thrown into this spring with COVID is not the same.
No, it's not.
At home is not the same as homeschooling.
No, it's like that example I was giving of the teacher that spent 10 years in one class, but it's even worse because now you've got the kids can YouTube how to mess around in Zoom class and they can switch their viewing windows for the teacher. And now she's like, guys, for the 5th time, I've told you I don't want to do this.
Yeah. But,
yeah.
So does that cover?
Oh yeah, no, thank y'all. That definitely. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a blast and it's been a real I really enjoyed getting that the master farming thing out of y'all because that's something I'm actually kind of low key interested in.
Yeah, definitely check with the extension office. That's where that all starts is when they start having a list of people who are interested, then that's when they're like, okay, it's time to have a class. We have this many people interested. And then they go back through the list and call them and be like, look, are you for sure interested? Because we're talking about offering a class this, January, February, March, on this day at this time. And then people will be like, yes, I can do it. No, I can't, whatever. But especially now that they're offering them online more, I think they'll have a lot more people interested.
Oh, yeah. You actually might have issues getting into the class.
Well, hopefully. Maybe not yet.
Maybe not yet, but it's soon. But yes. So go ahead and just tell everybody where y'all can be found, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, if you have any of those.
Yeah, so you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at RockyHead Homestead. We do not have a YouTube channel. We don't have.
Well, think about it. If y'all ever decide to make this a more permanent thing and actually go into the retirement, those farming channels really shoot off.
I think,
we've got a few videos out there.
Yeah.
That are just on my channel, I think, from where we done pecan processing last year.
Yeah, and I think that's something where we don't sell our pecans locally, a lot of people do. We ship all of our pecans almost all go out of state. Probably 85-90% go out of state.
Probably at least.
But the problem with that is they don't understand we don't have an orchard. We can't go out there with a tractor with one of those commercial pecan pickers pulling behind that's picking them all up, right? And we don't have the machinery that comes out and shakes the tree so all the pecans fall. We literally, thank you, Michael, for blowing all the wind, to knock all the pecans out of the tree, or Sally or whoever, whatever hurricane came up that week. And a lot of our trees are right along the highway. So we have the little rollers. So we did a video saying, hey, when we say it's going to be a week to 10 days for you to get your pecans, that's a best estimate, because by the time you roll them and then you have to still get all of the the shells and the leaves and the twigs out of the stuff, and then you have to get them cracked and shelled, and so it's a process. I mean, if we sold our pecans and figured in our labor cost, they would be worth gold. But
right.
Because we don't pay anything to produce I guess if we limed them and fertilized them, if we factor that cost in, but we literally are, we'd go broke if we figured labor cost into it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, RockyHead Homestead, find them on Facebook and Instagram. Thank y'all so much for coming on. I'll be definitely sure to get y'all on later next time.
Great. Thanks, Brock. Appreciate it.
All right.
All right.